You know how you look up at the sky, you see those long white lines trailing behind an airplane, and you probably don't think much of it? Well, what if I told you that for millions of people, those lines are at the center of a massive global conspiracy? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most persistent and fascinating conspiracy theories out there: chemtrails.
So, let's get right into it. The question seems simple enough, right? What are these white trails we see crisscrossing the sky? Are they just harmless water vapor, a totally normal part of air travel? Or is there something more sinister going on at 30,000 feet?
At the very heart of this whole thing, you have two competing ideas, two totally different stories for the exact same phenomenon. On one side, you've got the scientific explanation, contrails. That's short for condensation trails. And on the other side, you've got the conspiracy theory, chemtrails, chemical trails. Let's unpack what each side is actually claiming. Okay, so first up, let's really dig into the theory itself. To understand why it's so compelling for so many people, we have to know what believers actually mean when they talk about chemtrails. According to the theory, these are not your average contrails that fade away after a minute or two. No, proponents claim these are completely different. These are trails that linger for hours, that spread out and cover the sky in a hazy grid. And they believe it's all part of some secret, large-scale program to spray something into our atmosphere. So what are they supposedly spraying? Well, the list of alleged substances it's pretty alarming. We're talking heavy metals like barium and aluminum, even radioactive stuff like thorium. And it doesn't stop there. Some versions of the theory include polymer fibers and even pathogenic agents, bacteria and viruses. And the why behind it all is just as dramatic as the what. The alleged motives really run the gamut, from large-scale weather control and climate modification to much darker ideas like population control or even mass mind control. And as you might expect, during the pandemic, the theory evolved, with some claiming chemtrails were being used to spread COVID-19. Believe it or not, this isn't a new idea. The theory really started bubbling up in the mid-90s. It got a huge boost in 1996 when a research paper from the U.S. Air Force started circulating. It was called Weather as a Force Multiplier, and it talked about the future possibility of controlling weather for military advantage. Now, the military said this was just theoretical, not something they were doing, but the idea just took hold and spread like wildfire on the early internet. All right, so that's the theory, a secret global program with some pretty terrifying goals. But what happens when we take these claims and hold them up against what scientists actually know? Let's look at the evidence. This quote here from Stephen Davis, a scientist at UC Irvine, really says it all. The scientific community got to a point where they felt they couldn't just ignore this anymore. They decided to conduct a formal study to address all these claims head-on with cold, hard facts. And the results of that study? Well, they were about as decisive as it gets. They surveyed 77 of the world's top atmospheric scientists, the real experts in this field, and 98.7% of them, that's 76 out of 77, said they had found zero evidence of any secret large-scale spraying program. That is an absolutely overwhelming scientific consensus. So, if they're not chemtrails, what are they? They are exactly what scientists have been saying all along, contrails. It's actually pretty simple science. They're just lines of ice crystals. And the key thing to get here is that how long they last has absolutely nothing to do with secret chemicals and everything to do with the atmospheric conditions way up there. So let's break it down real quick. A jet engine shoots out super hot, humid exhaust. That exhaust hits the freezing cold air of the upper atmosphere. And just like you see your breath on a cold day, that water vapor instantly freezes onto tiny particles from the engine exhaust, creating a visible line of ice crystals. Now, if the air up there is really dry, the trail vanishes almost instantly. But if the air is humid, that ice trail sticks around for a while, sometimes for hours. It really is that simple. Now, one reason people get confused is that there is a real field of science called geoengineering, which is all about large-scale intervention in the Earth's climate. But there is a massive difference between the reality and the theory. Real geoengineering projects, like cloud seeding to try and make it rain, are done publicly. The conspiracy theory, on the other hand, describes a secret, malicious global plot. They're two completely different things. Okay, so what about all the proof that believers point to?
Well, science has explanations for that too. Those grid-like patterns you see, that's just what happens when you have a busy airport with planes flying in different flight paths. Those weird photos of tanks inside of planes, turns out those are just water barrels used to simulate the weight of passengers and cargo when they're testing new aircraft. And the strange fibers people find on the ground, well, analysis usually traces them back to normal industrial pollution, or even natural stuff, like, believe it or not, spider silk.
So, if the scientific evidence against it is so strong, why is this theory still so popular? It's a huge question, and the answers have a lot more to do with human psychology than they do with atmospheric science.
And make no mistake, it is incredibly popular. Studies have found that around 9% of Americans believe the theory is absolutely true, and another 19% think it's partially true. If you look globally, some estimates suggest that as many as 17% of people believe there's a secret spraying program going on. This is not some tiny fringe idea.
So what's really driving this? Well, a big one is a deep distrust in government and other authority figures. The theory also provides a simple, single bad guy to blame for really complex problems, like a strange illness or climate change. Plus, online communities can become powerful echo chambers where these beliefs just get repeated and reinforced. And you know what? It also taps into a very rational fear. We all know that air travel causes some pollution, and it just twists that fear into something much, much bigger. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so what? Let people believe what they want. But the thing is, this theory has real-world consequences that go way beyond just internet forums. And here's the crucial part. This is no longer just an online debate among strangers. The chemtrails theory has actually made the leap from the fringes of the internet right into the halls of power, and it's starting to influence actual political discussions and even proposed laws.
And I mean this literally. In over 30 American states, lawmakers have actually introduced bills trying to ban geoengineering, and they often use the exact same language and fears pushed by the chemtrails theory. It's a perfect example of how a belief, whether it's based in fact or not, can start online and end up directly influencing real-world policy. When you step back and look at the whole picture, the chemtrails theory is really a textbook case of how conspiracy thinking works. It takes real things that you can see with your own eyes, like the trails behind planes, and it weaves them into this huge, frightening narrative that seems to offer a simple explanation for a very complicated and often confusing world. And that really leaves us with one final crucial question. It's good to be skeptical, right? It's good to question authority. But where do you draw the line between that kind of healthy skepticism and falling down a rabbit hole for a conspiracy theory that ignores a mountain of evidence? It's definitely something to think about the next time you look up.